Music, there is a beautiful image that has been carried through the Buddhist tradition for over 2,000 years. It is the image of a monastery at the edge of a forest. The gate is always open, the lantern is always lit, and the teaching that waits inside is always the same. Offered gently to every tired traveler who finds their way there, the teaching is simply this: you have already arrived. There is nowhere else you need to go. Tonight, we are going to explore that teaching together. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The journey we are taking is called Nothing to Do. It is an honest invitation into one of the quietest, most radical, and most deeply comforting ideas that the ancient wisdom traditions have ever offered us. The idea that peace is not something we achieve, that stillness is not something we earn, that the rest we are longing for is not waiting for us on the other side of one more effort. It is already here, it has always been here. And over the next little while, we are simply going to find our way back to it together. Relax, take a slow, deep breath, and let's begin our journey together. There is an ancient teaching in the Zen tradition that says, sitting quietly doing nothing, spring comes music, and the grass grows by itself. These words were written many centuries ago, and yet they speak to something we all feel even now, even tonight. They speak to that quiet longing inside us. The longing to stop pushing, stop striving, stop trying so hard. The longing to trust that something good can happen without our constant effort to make it so. Most of us have spent our whole lives learning how to work harder, how to achieve more, how to fix and solve and arrange things. Just so, we are very good at doing. We have been trained for it since childhood, and there is nothing wrong with that. Effort is a beautiful part of being human, but there is another side to life. A quieter side that many of us have forgotten. It is the side that knows how to wait, the side that knows how to trust, the side that understands somewhere deep down that not everything important happens because we made it happen. Some of the most important things happen precisely because we finally got out of the way. Tonight, let us explore what happens when we stop, when we allow, when we trust the spring breeze to do what it has always done, which is to bring forth what is ready to bloom. Let us begin with a story. Long ago, in a small village nestled among hills and orchards, there lived an old farmer. He was a good man, kind to his neighbors, generous with what little he had. But he carried a heaviness in him, a quiet frustration that had settled into his bones over many years. You see, the farmer had a cherry orchard. It had been planted by his grandfather, tended by his father, and now it was his. Every spring the trees would bloom in great clouds of pale pink and white, and the whole village would come to walk among them. It was the most beautiful thing in the valley. But one year the winter was long, very long. The cold hung on well past when it should have loosened its grip, and the farmer grew worried. He walked among his bare trees every morning, looking up at the dark, empty branches, searching for any sign of life. Nothing, just grey wood against the grey sky. His neighbor, an old woman who had lived in the village even longer than he had, noticed him one morning standing beneath the largest tree, with his arms crossed and his brow furrowed. "What are you doing out here so early?" she asked. "Waiting," he said, "waiting for the blossoms." "But they are not coming," she smiled gently. "They are not late. You are early," he shook his head. "I have been patient long enough. Perhaps the trees need help. Perhaps I should prune them back harder, or perhaps I should wrap them in cloth to warm them." The old woman looked at him for a long moment. Then she said very simply, "You cannot open a bud with your fingers without destroying it." He stared at her. Then, "What am I supposed to do? Just stand here and do nothing?" "That is not nothing," she said quietly. "That is trust." He did not understand her. Then he went home and spent the rest of the day sharpening his pruning shears, planning what he would cut, sketching diagrams on scraps of paper, imagining how he could force the trees to wake up. That night, he lay in bed making plans. He would act. He would do something. He would not simply stand by and wait. He had always been a man who solved problems. Waiting felt like giving up. But the next morning, before he could begin his work, he stepped outside and felt something he had not felt in months. A warmth on his face, a softness in the air, a breeze barely there. Carrying with it the faintest scent of something sweet and green, he stood very still. He walked to the orchard. The dawn light was pale gold, and the mist was just beginning to lift from the valley below. And there, on the lowest branch of the oldest tree, was a single bud, pale green, just barely open, delicate, perfect. It had come in the night while he was sleeping, while he was doing nothing at all. He stood beneath that tree for a long time, looking up at that small, quiet miracle. And he thought of the old woman's words, "That is not nothing, that is trust." Over the next few days, the orchard exploded into bloom. Not because of anything he did, but because the season had turned. The spring breeze had arrived softly in its own time, and it had brought with it everything the trees needed to flower. There is a verse by an old Zen poet that captures this beautifully. He wrote, "Break open a cherry tree and there are no flowers, but the spring breeze brings forth 1,000 blossoms." Think about that for a moment. If you were to take an axe to a cherry tree in the middle of winter and split it open, you would find no flowers inside, no color, no fragrance, just wood and sap and silence. You might think the tree was empty. You might think it had nothing to offer, but you would be wrong. The flowers were always there, hidden in potential, waiting for the right conditions. And what were those right conditions? Not force, not effort, not someone prying the bark apart with their hands, just warmth, just light, just the gentle, patient breath of spring. This is one of the deepest teachings in Buddhist wisdom, and it is also one of the simplest. There are things in this life that cannot be forced. There are things that will only come when the conditions are right. And sometimes the most important thing we can do is not to act, but to allow. The Buddha himself spoke of this when he taught about the middle way. He said that just as a lute string that is too tight will snap, and one that is too loose will not play, the path to peace is found in the balance between striving and surrender. Not too much, not too little, just enough effort to create the right conditions, and then the trust to let go and see what unfolds. Now let us sit with this idea for a moment, because it touches something very real in our everyday lives. How often do we try to force things? How often do we grip tightly to a plan, a hope, a vision of how things should be, and then exhaust ourselves trying to make it happen on our schedule, in our way? Perhaps it is a relationship that we are trying to mend. We keep pushing, keep explaining, keep trying to say the right thing at the right time. And the more we push, the wider the distance seems to grow. Perhaps it is sleep itself. You are lying in bed, willing yourself to fall asleep, watching the clock, calculating how many hours you will get if you fall asleep right now. And of course, the trying is the very thing that keeps you awake. Sleep, like the cherry blossom, does not respond to force. It comes when it comes. It comes when you stop trying. It arrives like a guest who will only enter the room once you have stopped watching the door. There is a phrase sometimes used in Buddhist teachings, the backwards law. It points to this strange and wonderful truth that some of the things we want most in life come to us only when we stop chasing them. Peace, happiness, rest, a quiet mind. The more we chase them, the further they seem to run. The moment we stop, they settle beside us like a cat who was waiting all along for us to sit still. Perhaps there is something inside you tonight, a feeling you have been trying to get rid of. An old sadness, a worry, an ache that you have been carrying for a long time. You have tried everything, you have analyzed it, you have talked about it, you have pushed it down and pulled it apart, and still there it is. What if just for tonight you could set down the tools? What if you could put away the pruning shears and the plans and the effort and simply stand in the orchard and wait for the breeze? This is what the Buddha meant when he spoke about the middle way. not the way of extreme effort, not the way of giving up entirely, but the gentle path between them, the path of doing just enough and then trusting. Let us explore another story, one that carries this same gentle truth. In a quiet monastery in the mountains, there once lived a young student who was very earnest in his practice. He woke before dawn every morning. He sat in meditation for hours. He studied the old texts by candlelight. He was by every measure a dedicated and sincere practitioner, but he was not at peace. One afternoon, clear as throat, he found his teacher in the garden kneeling beside a small patch of freshly turned earth. "Teacher, I have been practicing with great effort for 3 years now. I sit every morning. I study every night. I follow every instruction, and yet music, I feel no closer to understanding than when I began. What am I doing wrong?" The teacher did not look up. He was pressing a small seed into the soil with his thumb. "Sit with me," he said. The student sat down beside him in the dirt. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The teacher finished planting, brushed the soil smooth with his palm, and then sat back and looked at the little mound of earth. "What did you just plant?" the student asked. "A plum tree," the teacher said. The student looked at the tiny patch of dirt. "It does not look like a plum tree." "No," the teacher agreed, "it does not. When will it become one?" The teacher smiled. "When it is ready. But what should I do to help it? Water it, give it light, protect it from the frost when winter comes, and then leave it alone. That is all. That is everything." The student frowned. "But what if I want it to grow faster? What if I dig it up each week to see how the roots are doing?" The teacher looked at him then with great kindness. "If you dig it up to check the roots, it will never grow at all. Every time you disturb it, you set it back. Every time you pull it from the soil to see how it is doing, you break the very threads that are reaching down into the earth. The roots do their work in the dark. You must let them." The student was quiet for a long time. A bird called from somewhere in the trees. The afternoon light shifted. Finally, he said softly, "You are not talking about the tree, are you?" "I am talking about everything," the teacher said. He looked at his student with warm eyes. "You have watered well. You have shown up every morning. That is your part. Now you must learn the harder thing." "What is that?" "To trust the soil." There is a teaching attributed to the Buddha that goes something like this: "You cannot travel the path until you have become the path itself." It is a puzzling thing to hear at first, but perhaps what it points to is this same truth. The path is not something separate from you, something you must struggle toward from the outside. It is already within you. It is growing quietly in the dark the way roots grow, and your job is not to force it, but to stop digging it up. This is such a simple teaching, and yet how difficult it can be to live. We live in a world that tells us we must always be improving, always checking our progress, always measuring ourselves against where we think we should be. We dig up our own roots constantly. We examine ourselves with a critical eye. We ask over and over, "Am I there yet? Am I better? Am I fixed? Am I enough?" And every time we do this, we disturb the very process that was quietly unfolding beneath the surface. Think of how often you check in on your own growth, not with gentleness, but with impatience. How often you compare where you are to where you think you should be. How often you look at others and wonder why their trees are blooming and yours are not. But you cannot see another person's roots. You cannot see the long winters they endured, the seasons they waited through, the silent, patient work that was happening underground where no one could see. And you cannot see your own roots either. That is the nature of roots. They do their most important work in the dark, in the quiet, in the places we cannot reach with our measuring tools. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a deep trust in what might be called our natural capacity for wholeness. The teachings suggest that within every person there is an innate movement toward healing, toward peace, toward understanding. It is not something we need to manufacture or earn. It is already there, the way the blossom is already there inside the winter tree, but it needs the right conditions to emerge. And what are those conditions? They are simpler than we think. Stillness, patience, a willingness to stop interfering. The Buddha once compared the mind to a pool of water that has been stirred up by the wind. When the wind is blowing, the clear throat water is cloudy and turbulent. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot see your own reflection. But when the wind stops, something remarkable happens. You do not need to do anything to the water. You do not need to filter it or strain it or force it to become clear. You simply stop stirring and the sediment settles on its own. The water becomes clear by itself because clarity is its nature. Your mind is like this. Your heart is like this. Beneath all the stirring, beneath all the worry and the planning and the effort, there is a natural clarity, a natural peace. And it is not something you need to create. It is something you can allow. It is already your nature. The way stillness is the nature of water, the way blossoming is the nature of the tree. Perhaps you can feel it even now, even just a little. Beneath the thoughts that are still moving through your mind, beneath the tensions you are still carrying in your body, there is something quiet, something still. It has been there all day, all week, all year. It has been there your whole life. In fact, you have just been too busy stirring the water to notice. There is a beautiful quality that grows in a person who begins to trust this natural process. It is hard to name exactly, but you can feel it when you are around someone who has it. It is a kind of ease, a quiet warmth, not the confidence that comes from knowing all the answers, but the deeper confidence that comes from knowing that you do not need to have all the answers. It is the peace of a person who has stopped fighting with life and has begun very gently to move with it instead. It is the confidence of the farmer who has planted his seeds, watered them well, and now sits on his porch in the evening, trusting that the earth knows what to do. He does not lie awake at night, worrying about whether the roots are growing in the right direction. He does not run out with a lantern at midnight to check on the leaves. He has done his part, and now he rests. Think of how peaceful that farmer looks sitting there in the evening light. His hands are still, his mind is quiet, not because he does not care, but because he has learned the difference between caring and controlling. He cares deeply, but he has released the need to control every outcome, every timeline, every detail, and in that release he has found something that all his effort could never give him. He has found rest. In Buddhist teachings, this quality is sometimes called faith, though it is not faith in the way we might usually think of it. It is not faith in something outside ourselves, not faith in a distant promise. It is faith in the process itself. Faith that when we create the right conditions, when we sit still and become quiet and stop interfering, something good will naturally begin to move within us. And this is not a blind hope. If you have ever sat quietly for even a few minutes and noticed your shoulders begin to drop, noticed your breathing begin to slow, noticed a thought that was gripping you begin to loosen its hold, then you have already seen this process at work. You have already felt the spring breeze. It was not something you did. It was something that happened when you stopped doing. This is the beautiful secret at the heart of tonight's teaching. You do not have to earn your peace. You do not have to build it brick by brick. Snorts, you simply have to stop standing in its way, and then like water finding its level, like a tree turning toward the light, like blossoms opening in their own perfect time, peace finds you. So tonight as you rest here, consider this gentle invitation. Is there something in your life that you have been trying to force? Some bud you have been prying open with your fingers. Some seed you have been digging up to check on. You do not need to solve it tonight. You do not even need to think about it very much. Simply notice it. Acknowledge it gently the way you music might acknowledge an old friend you have not seen in a while, and then very softly let it be. Let it rest in your own awareness. Let it be held there without interference, without judgment, without any effort to make it grow faster or bloom sooner than it is ready to. Trust the spring breeze. It has never failed to come. It may not come on your schedule. It may not come in the way you expected, but it will come. It always does, is the way of things. The seasons turn. The ice melts. The bud opens. Not because anyone commands it, but because that is what life does when it is given the space to do it. And you too are part of this life. You too are part of this turning. Whatever is dormant in you, whatever is waiting to bloom, it knows when it is time. Your only task is to keep the soil warm and to trust the dark. As the old Zen saying goes, sitting quietly doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. Let us pause here for a moment. Take a breath, if you like. Notice how you feel. There is nowhere to rush to, and when you are ready, we will continue together. There is a tenderness in us that wants to help. When we see someone we love in pain, something rises up almost before we can think, and it says, "Fix this. Take it away. Make it stop." It is one of the most human things about us. This impulse to reach out and smooth the rough edges of life for the people around us and for ourselves. We do it all day long in small ways and large ones. A friend tells us about a problem, and before they have finished speaking, we are already offering solutions. A child falls down, and we rush to pick them up before they have even decided whether or not to cry. We feel a difficult emotion stirring inside ourselves, and immediately we reach for something to soothe it, to quiet it, to make it go somewhere else. And yet the old Buddhist teachers would sometimes say something surprising. They would say, "Be careful with that impulse. Be gentle with it." Because sometimes the very thing that looks like help is what keeps the healing from happening. Tonight, let us sit with that idea for a while, not as a lesson to be learned, but as a kind of lullaby for the part of you that is always trying to fix things, the part that works so hard, the part that never quite rests because it is always scanning for the next problem to solve. That part of you has done such good work. But tonight it can rest too. Let us explore the strange and beautiful truth that some kinds of struggle are not problems to be solved. They are doorways to be walked through. Let us explore a story that has been told in many places, in many forms across many years. Once in a small garden behind a quiet house, a person was sitting in the late afternoon shade music, watching the insects move among the leaves. It was the kind of slow golden afternoon where nothing much needed to happen, and that was perfectly fine. As they sat there, they noticed something unusual on a low branch nearby. A cocoon, pale and papery, was hanging from a twig, and it was moving very slightly, very slowly. Something inside was pressing outward. A tiny crack had appeared along one side, and through it they could see the faintest hint of color. Something alive, something trying to emerge. They watched, fascinated. The creature inside was working so hard, they could see the silk stretching and then tightening again like a tiny heartbeat visible through fabric. Every few moments a small leg or the edge of a damp wing would press through the crack, only to slip back inside. It looked exhausting. It looked like the creature was failing, trying and failing over and over again to do the simplest thing in the world, which was to be born into its next life. The person sat and watched for a long time. The afternoon light moved across the garden. The shadows grew longer, and still the butterfly pushed and rested, pushed and rested. After a while, the watching became uncomfortable. Not because it was boring, but because something in the person's heart, the struggle seemed so unnecessary, so painful. Surely the creature was suffering in there. Surely it would be kinder, more merciful to help. And so very gently, very carefully, the person reached out and began to pull apart the threads of the cocoon. Just a little, just enough to widen the opening. They did it with such tenderness, such good intention. They were not being careless, they were being kind. The butterfly slipped free almost immediately. It tumbled softly onto the leaf below, and for a moment it was beautiful, wet and new, and trembling with life. But something was wrong. Its wings were crumpled, small and soft, pressed close to its body. They had not fully opened. The butterfly sat there on the leaf, opening and closing those tiny folded wings, but they would not spread, they would not catch the air, they would not lift. What the kind person had not known, what they could not have known, was that the struggle was the point. The pressing and pushing against the walls of the cocoon was not an obstacle to flight. It was the preparation for it. Each push sent fluid from the body into the wings. Each moment of effort stretched and strengthened the delicate membranes until they were wide enough and strong enough to carry the creature into the sky. By removing the struggle, the person had removed the very thing the butterfly needed most. Now let us hold this gently, because this is not a story about blame. The person in the garden was not wrong to care. Their heart was in exactly the right place. They saw suffering and they wanted to help. That is a beautiful instinct. That is compassion. But there is a kind of wisdom that goes deeper than the first impulse to fix. It is the wisdom that knows the difference between suffering that is harming and effort that is growing. Not all difficulty is damage. Some difficulty is the cocoon, and within it, something is becoming what it was always meant to be. In Buddhist teaching, there is a word that is sometimes translated as compassion, but it carries a wider meaning. It includes wisdom. The old teacher said that compassion without wisdom can be like a river without banks. It flows everywhere, but it does not know where to go. True compassion knows when to act and when to wait. It knows when to reach out and when to simply be present. It knows when to pull the threads apart and when to sit beside the cocoon and say quietly, "I am here and I trust you." Let us explore another story. There was once a teacher who lived at the edge of a small village. People would come to see this teacher for all sorts of reasons. Some came because they were confused. Some came because they were grieving. Some came because they had heard the teacher was wise and they wanted some of that wisdom for themselves. One afternoon, a young woman arrived. She looked tired. She sat down across from the teacher and said, "I have been struggling for a very long time." "Tell me," the teacher said. "I have a restlessness in me." The young woman said, "It has been with me for as long as I can remember, no matter what I do, no matter how good things are in my life. There is always this feeling underneath, like something is not quite settled, like I have not yet arrived somewhere I am supposed to be." The teacher nodded slowly. "And what have you done about this restlessness?" The young woman let out a long breath. "Everything. I have read books. I have talked to healers. I have tried to think my way through it, to understand where it comes from, to trace it back to some beginning, so I can undo it. I have tried to breathe it away. I have tried to fill the space with other things, with work, with friendship, with beautiful places. And sometimes those things help for a while, but the restlessness always comes back." "Of course it does," the teacher said gently. The young woman looked surprised. "Why of course?" "Because you keep picking at it." There was a silence between them. Outside, the wind moved through the tall grass. "Let me ask you something," the teacher said. "Have you ever had a small wound on your hand? A scrape perhaps from a fall, yes. And did you notice what happened when you left it alone?" The young woman thought for a moment. "It healed." "How long did it take? A few days? A week? Maybe. And did you have to tell it how to heal? Did you have to instruct your skin to grow back together?" She almost smiled. "No, no. You did nothing and it healed, because that is what the body does when you give it space. It knows how to mend itself. It has always known." The teacher paused. "Now what happens if you keep touching the wound? If you pick at the edge of it every few hours? If you peel back the new skin each time it forms? It takes much longer to heal. Sometimes it gets worse. Sometimes it scars in ways it never needed to," the teacher said softly. "Not because the wound was so terrible, but because the healing was never allowed to finish." The young woman sat with this for a long while. The light changed in the room. The shadows grew longer. Finally, she said, You are saying, I have been picking at my own wound. I am saying that perhaps your restlessness is not as permanent as you think it is. Perhaps it has been trying to heal for a very long time. And perhaps every time you reach in to fix it, to analyze it, to understand it, to make it go away, you interrupt the very process that would have resolved it on its own. Then what do I do? The teacher smiled. You are asking the wrong question. The question is not, what do I do? The question is, can I stop doing? Can I leave it alone? Can I let it be what it is without rushing to change it and see what happens? There is such relief in those words if we let them in. Can I stop doing? Can I leave it alone? How many of us have been that young woman sitting across from life saying, I have tried everything? How many of us have read the books and had the conversations and made the plans and followed the advice and still felt that same familiar feeling underneath, the one that will not quite go away? And how strange it is to consider that maybe the trying is part of the problem. Not because we are doing the wrong things, but because all the doing, all the reaching and analyzing and fixing keeps our hands on the wound. It keeps us picking at the edges of something that left alone might have quietly mended itself while we were sleeping or walking or watching the sky do nothing at all. We carry so many things that we keep trying to fix. Old patterns, old feelings, old stories about who we are and why we are the way we are, and we poke at them and prod at them and analyze them and try to understand them from every possible angle. And all that poking keeps the wound fresh. All that attention, that particular kind of anxious, problem-solving attention, keeps the thing alive that might otherwise have quietly faded on its own. The Buddha is said to have taught that suffering is like being struck by two arrows. The first arrow is the difficult thing itself, the loss, the disappointment, the fear, the restlessness. We cannot always avoid that first arrow. Life sends it and it lands. That is simply what it is to be alive. Things happen that we did not choose and would not have chosen. But the second arrow is the one we shoot at ourselves. It is our reaction to the first arrow. It is the worry about the worry, the frustration about the frustration, the voice that says, why am I still feeling this? What is wrong with me? Why can I not get past this? It is the endless picking at the wound, trying to figure out why it is there and what it means and how to make it go away. That second arrow, the Buddha said, is optional, and it often causes more suffering than the first. What a gentle thing to hear. That second arrow is optional. What if tonight you could gently set down the second arrow, not the first one? You do not need to pretend that nothing hurts. You do not need to pretend that everything is fine. But the second layer, the layer of resistance and analysis and self-criticism, that layer you can soften. That layer you can let rest. You can let the wound be a wound without also making it a project. Let us return for a moment to our butterfly. Think of what it would be like to sit beside that cocoon and simply watch. Not to interfere, not to reach in, just to be there, present and patient, trusting that inside that small trembling shell, something extraordinary is happening. It would take a certain kind of courage, would it not? The courage to witness struggle without rushing to end it. The courage to say, I do not understand exactly what is happening in there, but I trust that it is necessary. The courage to be still. There is a phrase in the Zen tradition, just sitting. It sounds so simple, and in a way it is, but it is also one of the most radical things a person can do. In a world that is always asking us to act, to solve, to fix, to improve, to do something, anything. Just sitting is an act of profound trust. It is the trust that says something in me knows what to do, and I do not need to be in charge of it. This is what the young woman in our story was being invited to discover. Not that her restlessness did not matter, it mattered deeply. But the way through it was not more effort, it was less. It was the willingness to let the cocoon do its work, to let the wound close at its own pace, to let the butterfly push against the silk until its wings were strong enough to fly. And perhaps you notice something else in that story. The teacher did not say the restlessness would go away. The teacher did not promise a cure. What the teacher offered was something more honest and in its own way more kind. The teacher said, "Stop interfering with a process that is already underway. Your healing has already begun. It began a long time ago. You just keep interrupting it." What a different way to see ourselves. Not as broken things that need to be fixed, but as whole things that need to be left alone long enough to remember their wholeness. There is something else hidden in this teaching that is worth noticing. It is the idea that difficulty itself can be purposeful, not in a harsh way, not in the way that says you deserve to suffer. That is not what this is about at all, but in the gentler sense that sometimes the resistance we encounter is not a sign that something is going wrong. It is a sign that something is going right. Think of the butterfly again. If you were inside that cocoon, if you were the one pushing against the walls, it would not feel like growth. It would feel like being trapped. It would feel like something was wrong. You would want it to stop. You would want someone to come and tear the walls open and let you out. But the walls are not the enemy. The walls are what your wings need. There is a well-known teaching in Buddhism about a lotus flower. The lotus is one of the most beautiful flowers in the world. Its petals are soft and luminous, and when it opens, it seems almost to glow. People have admired it for thousands of years, painted it, written poems about it, placed it at the feet of sacred statues. But here is what makes the lotus so remarkable. It does not grow in clear, clean water. It does not bloom in a carefully tended garden. The lotus grows in muddy water, in murky ponds, in places where the water is dark and thick and you cannot see the bottom. Its roots reach down into the silt and the heaviness. And from that darkness, from that muddiness, it draws everything it needs to rise to the surface and open in the sun. No mud, no lotus. That is how the old teachers sometimes put it. No difficulty, no depth, no struggle, no wings. This is not a hard teaching. It is actually, if you let it be, a very comforting one. It does not say that you should seek out difficulty or hold on to pain. It simply says that when difficulty is already here, when the mud is already around your roots, you do not need to panic. You do not need to fix it immediately. You can trust that something in you knows how to use it, the way the lotus knows how to use the mud. Music the way the butterfly knows how to use the cocoon. The very thing you thought was holding you back may be feeding you. The very thing you wanted to escape may be exactly where your roots need to be for now. And so as you rest here tonight, perhaps you can hold this thought gently. Whatever you have been struggling with, whatever cocoon you may be inside right now, it is not a trap. It may feel tight. It may feel dark. You may not be able to see what is on the other side, but something is happening in there. Something quiet and strong and patient. Your wings are being built, and they are being built by the very effort that feels so difficult. You do not need to understand it. You do not need to manage it. You do not even need to believe it fully. Just consider the possibility softly, the way you might consider a candle flame in a dark room. The possibility that you are not stuck, you are becoming. The cocoon is not a prison. It is a cradle, and you are held within it more carefully than you know. And when the time is right, when your wings are wide enough and strong enough, the cocoon will open on its own and you will fly. Not because someone rescued you, but because you did the quiet, hidden, beautiful work of growing in the dark. Because you trusted the mud. Because you let the wound heal. Because you were brave enough to stay inside the struggle and let it build you into something new. As an old Buddhist saying reminds us, the lotus does not think about the mud. It simply grows toward the light. Let us pause here for a moment. Take a gentle breath. Feel the weight of your body resting where it is. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Right now, if you listen, there are sounds around you. Perhaps the hum of something nearby. Perhaps silence itself, which is its own kind of sound if you pay attention. Perhaps the rhythm of your own breathing, which has been going on this whole time without you needing to think about it at all. These sounds, this breath, this moment, this is your life. Not the one you are planning for tomorrow, not the one you are remembering from yesterday. This one right here. A Zen teacher once said something very simple and very startling. He said, "When you listen for something wonderful, you miss the bird that is singing right now." Let us stay with that thought for a while, because there is a whole world inside it. Let us explore a story about a traveler. A long time ago, a young man set out on a journey. He had heard from someone he trusted that there was a temple in the mountains where a great teacher lived. This teacher, he was told, knew the secret of true happiness, not ordinary happiness, the kind that comes and goes with the weather, but the deep kind, the lasting kind, the kind that does not depend on anything. So the young man packed a bag and set off. He walked for many days. The road was long and the scenery was beautiful. He passed through valleys filled with wild flowers. He crossed streams where the water was so clear he could see every stone on the bottom. He walked through forests where the light came down in golden columns through the leaves, and the air smelled like damp earth and pine, but the young man barely noticed any of it. His eyes were on the road ahead. His mind was on the temple, on the teacher, on the secret. He walked quickly, purposefully, leaning forward into each step as if the faster he moved, the sooner he would arrive at the happiness he was looking for. Along the way, he passed an old woman sitting beside the road, resting in the shade of a large tree. She was eating a piece of fruit slowly and watching the clouds. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" she asked. "To the temple in the mountains," he said, not stopping. "There is a teacher there who knows the secret of happiness." The old woman nodded slowly. "I see, and are you unhappy now?" This made him pause, but only for a moment. "I will be happy when I arrive," he said, and kept walking. The old woman called after him gently, "The fruit is very sweet today," but he was already gone, his footsteps quick on the dusty road, his mind miles ahead of his body. He did not taste the fruit, he did not feel the shade of the tree. He did not notice the way the light was playing on the hills in the distance, making them glow like something from a dream. He was too busy arriving somewhere else. He walked for 3 more days. The road grew steeper, his feet ached, his pack grew heavy, his water ran low, and once he passed a beautiful spring, rushing cold and clear over smooth stones. But he barely paused long enough to fill his flask. There was no time, the temple was ahead, and everything he wanted was inside it. When he finally arrived, he was exhausted. His legs trembled. His lips were dry. The temple was small, much smaller than he had imagined. A quiet building at the edge of a mountain meadow, with an old wooden porch and a garden that needed weeding. A few chickens scratched in the dust near the steps. It did not look like a place that held the secret of happiness. It looked like a place where someone lived a very ordinary life. The teacher was sitting on the porch drinking tea. The young man bowed and said, "Teacher, I have come a very long way. I have heard that you know the secret of true happiness. Will you teach me?" The teacher looked at him for a long while. Then the teacher said, "Tell me about your journey here, my journey." The young man was confused. "There is nothing to tell." "I walked. The road was long." "What did you see?" "I do not know. I was not paying attention. I was focused on arriving." "Ah," the teacher said softly, and there was a sadness in that small word. The teacher set down the teacup and said, "You passed through the valley of wildflowers, did you not?" "I suppose I did, and the stream with the clear water and the forest with the golden light." "How do you know that?" "Because I have walked that road, and I will tell you something." The teacher leaned forward slightly. "The secret you came here to find. You walked through it. For 3 days it was all around you, and you did not see it, because you were looking for it somewhere else." The young man stood there for a long time, saying nothing. The chickens clucked softly. A breeze moved through the meadow grass, and somewhere in the trees beyond the temple a bird was singing. "Listen," the teacher said, And for the first time in a very long time, the young man did. There is something in this story that most of us recognize because most of us have done exactly what this young man did. We have walked past our own lives on the way to somewhere else. We do it every day in 100 small ways. We sit at breakfast, but our mind is already at work sorting through tasks, rehearsing conversations. We drive home in the evening, but our mind is on what needs to happen next, what needs to be cooked, what needs to be done before bed. We lie down at night, and instead of feeling the extraordinary comfort of a pillow, the warmth of a blanket, the simple pleasure of a body at rest, our mind is already in tomorrow, planning, preparing, worrying. We are always one step ahead of where we actually are, always leaning forward, always reaching for the next thing. And in all that reaching, we miss what is already in our hands. We miss the taste of the food. We miss the colors of the sky on the drive home. We miss the feeling of our own head sinking into the pillow. Not because these things are not beautiful, but because we are not here to notice them. The Buddhist tradition has a word for this. It is sometimes translated as thirst or craving. Not a thirst for water, but a thirst for something more, something other, something better than what is here right now. It is a restless, forward-leaning energy, and almost all of us carry it. It whispers so quietly we barely hear it. Not yet, not here, not enough, just a little further, just a little more. Then you will be happy. But then never arrives, does it? Because when we get to then, it immediately becomes now, and the thirst moves on to the next then. It is a door that keeps opening into another hallway, which leads to another door, which keeps opening into another hallway. And we can spend our whole lives walking through those doors, never realizing that the room we were looking for was the very first one we left behind. What a tender realization that is. Not a harsh one, not a scolding one, just tender. Just a gentle recognition that we have been looking in the wrong direction and that turning around is always available to us. Right now, in any moment, in this moment, you might be wondering, but how? If I have spent my whole life leaning forward, how do I learn to be here? And the answer may surprise you, because it is not really about learning at all. It is more about unlearning, about letting go of the habit, of reaching the habit of wanting things to be different from how they are, the habit of measuring this moment against some imagined better one. You already know how to be present. You do it every time something truly captures your attention. You do it when a piece of music moves you, and for a moment the whole world disappears. You do it when you step outside on a cold morning and the air hits your face. And for 1 second, one clean second, there is nothing in your mind except that shock of cold. You do it when you laugh, really laugh. And for a moment, you are not thinking about yourself at all. Presence is not something we need to build. It is something we keep covering up, and tonight very gently we can begin to clear away some of the covering. There is a beautiful quality in the Zen tradition that is sometimes called beginner's mind. It is the art of seeing things as if for the first time. Not with the tired, familiar eyes of someone who has seen it all before, but with the fresh, wondering eyes of someone who is encountering the world brand new. A child has this naturally. Watch a small child encounter a puddle after the rain. They do not walk past it. They do not check their phone. They do not think, I know what a puddle is. They stand at the edge of it and stare. They crouch down. They touch the water with one finger and watch the ripples spread outward in perfect circles. Their face lights up. They are completely absorbed. The puddle is the most fascinating thing in the universe because they have no idea what it is, and they have no need for it to be anything other than what it is. We lose this as we grow older. We learn the names of things, and we think that knowing the name means knowing the thing. We see a tree, and we think tree, and we move on, as if the word has captured everything there is to know about it. But it has not. The word is a tiny container, and the thing itself is vast and alive and changing every moment. The bark, the way the light catches in the leaves at this particular hour, the particular sound this tree makes in the wind, which is different from every other tree that has ever grown, the small insects moving through its branches, the smell of it after rain. All of that is lost when we replace the living thing with the label. We do this with people too. We see someone we have known for years and we think we know them. We have a file for them in our minds, a summary, and we interact with the summary instead of with the actual person standing in front of us. We do it with ourselves. We have a story about who we are, and we move through the day inside that story, rarely looking up to see if it is still true, rarely noticing the ways we have changed, the ways we are still changing. The Zen teachers understood this deeply. One teacher put it this way: in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. When we think we already know what something is, we stop seeing it. When we think we already know what our life is, we stop living it. We start living in our idea of our life instead. And that is a much smaller, much thinner place than the real thing. Let us return to our traveler for a moment, because his story does not end on the temple porch. After his conversation with the teacher, the young man stayed at the temple for a few days. He kept waiting for the real teaching to begin. He kept expecting the teacher to sit him down and tell him something profound, some great insight, some ancient formula for happiness. But the teacher did not do any of that. Instead, the teacher just went about the day. In the morning, the teacher swept the porch. In the afternoon, the teacher worked in the garden. In the evening, the teacher cooked a simple meal and sat on the steps to watch the sun go down. "Teacher," the young man finally said, "when will you teach me?" The teacher looked at him, a clear's throat, little surprised. "I have been teaching you since you arrived, but you have not said anything." "I have been saying everything. You have just been waiting for words." The young man did not understand, but something in the teacher's voice made him quiet. And in that quiet, something small shifted inside him. He looked out at the meadow. The light was turning golden. The grass was bending in the breeze. A bird landed on the porch railing and cocked its head as if it too were listening. And the young man realized something so simple it almost made him laugh. The teacher was happy, not because of some secret knowledge, not because of some great attainment, not because of years of study or some mystical experience, but because the teacher was actually here fully, completely simply here, sweeping the porch. The teacher was just sweeping the porch. There was no rushing through it to get to the next task. There was no wishing to be somewhere else. Pulling weeds. The teacher was just pulling weeds, feeling the soil between their fingers, noticing the small insects moving through the leaves, watching the sunset. The teacher was just watching the sunset. And the sunset was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. There was no leaning forward, no reaching for something better. Just this, just here, just now. The young man thought about all the miles he had walked. He thought about the wild flowers he had passed without seeing the cold, clear spring he had barely paused at. The old woman and her sweet fruit. He had been so determined to find happiness that he had walked straight through it again and again for days. He did not feel regret, that is the lovely part. He did not feel sad or foolish. He just felt something open inside him, like a window being pushed gently outward. And through it came the evening air, and the smell of the meadow, and the sound of the bird on the railing. The bird ruffled its feathers and began to sing, and for the second time he listened. But this time he heard it. There is a saying attributed to the Buddha: "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." It sounds so simple, and in a way it is, but simple is not always the same as easy. Our minds are such wonderful, restless, creative things. They can travel across oceans in an instant. They can revisit a conversation from 10 years ago and rewrite it word by word. They can build entire futures out of nothing but hope and worry. This is a remarkable ability. It is part of what makes us human. But it comes at a cost. And the cost is this: every moment we spend in the past or the future is a moment we are not here in the only place where life is actually happening. Think about that for a moment. Really let it land. The past is a memory. It is not happening now. The future is a thought. It has not happened yet, and it may never happen in the way we imagine it. Neither of them is real in the way that this moment is real. This breath you are taking right now, the feeling of your body resting, the temperature of the air on your skin, the sounds around you near and far. This is real. Everything else is a story your mind is telling itself, and the stories are not bad. We do not need to fight them or push them away. Some of our stories are beautiful. Some of our memories are precious, but we can hold them more lightly. We can recognize them for what they are, which is thoughts, and then gently return our attention to what is here. The way you might notice that you have been staring at a map for a long time, and then look up and realize that the actual landscape around you is far more beautiful and alive and textured than any map could ever show. The map is useful, but it is not the territory, and the territory, this living, breathing present moment, is where the birds are singing. There is another small story worth telling here, a very simple one. A student once asked a Zen teacher, "What is the essence of your practice?" The teacher said, "When I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep." The student said, "But everyone does that." The teacher shook his head gently. "No, when most people eat, they are thinking about 100 other things. They are chewing, yes, but their mind is somewhere else entirely. When most people sleep, they are worrying about tomorrow, planning, rehearsing. Their eyes are closed, but they are not resting. That is not eating, that is not sleeping. That is being somewhere else while your body goes through the motions. There is something so freeing about this." The teacher is not asking us to do something extraordinary, not asking us to climb a mountain or sit in a cave for 10 years, just to eat when we eat, just to sleep when we sleep, just to be where we are doing what we are doing without the mind running off to some other place in time. And you know what is beautiful about this? You can do it right now. You do not have to wait until morning. You do not have to go anywhere or learn anything new. You are already here. You are already breathing. You are already listening. That is enough. That has always been enough. How true this is, and how gentle the invitation. Not to become some perfect enlightened being who never has a wandering thought. Just to come back again and clears throat again. To come back to the warmth of the blanket, to the softness of the pillow, to the sound of these words or the silence between them, to this breath, this one. You have done this 1,000 times already tonight without even realizing it. Every time your mind wandered off somewhere and then softly returned to these words, that was it. That was the whole practice. Not the wandering, but the returning, the soft, effortless turning of your attention back to what is here. Like a bird circling back to its branch. Like the traveler finally looking up from the road and seeing the flowers that had been there all along. The wild flowers were always there. The clear stream was always there. The golden light was always there. You just forgot to look, and now gently, without effort, you are remembering. You are coming home to the only place you have ever actually been. Let us rest here for a breath or two. You are doing beautifully. There is nothing more you need to take in. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Have you ever noticed what happens at the very end of a long day? When you have finally finished everything, when the last task is done, and there is truly nothing left to do. There is a moment just before sleep when the mind does something remarkable. It stops. Not because you told it to, not because you made any effort at all. It simply runs out of things to spin about. And in that gap, that small quiet gap, there is peace. It arrives so softly you might not even notice it. It does not announce itself. It does not feel dramatic or important. It just settles over you the way dusk settles over a field. One moment there is light and activity and movement. and the next everything has gone still. And you realize that the stillness was there all along underneath the noise, waiting for the noise to tire itself out. This is not an accident. This is not a trick your body plays on you when it is too tired to keep going. This is something much more interesting. It is a clue about the nature of your own mind, hiding in plain sight, available every single day, but so quiet and so ordinary that most of us walk right past it without a second thought. Tonight, let us rest in a very comforting idea. It is one of the kindest things the Buddhist tradition has to offer, and it is simply this. Peace is not something you have to build, it is what remains when you stop building everything else. Let us explore a story. In a small village, there was once an old woman who was known for her calm. Not the stiff, effortful calm of someone who is holding everything in, but a soft calm, a warm calm, the kind that made other people feel at ease just by sitting near her. People came to her often not because she gave advice, really. She rarely did. But there was something about being in her presence that made things feel less urgent. Problems that had seemed enormous on the walk over somehow looked smaller by the time you sat down across from her and she poured you a cup of tea. One evening, a young man from the village came to see her. He was troubled. You could see it in the way. He walked quick and tight, his shoulders hunched up near his ears. He sat down at her table and immediately began talking. "I cannot stop worrying," he said. "I worry about my work. I worry about my family. I worry about things that have not even happened yet. My mind never stops. Even when I lie down at night, it keeps going. I can feel it spinning like a wheel that someone has set turning and forgotten to stop." The old woman listened. She poured the tea. She did not rush to answer. After a long while, she said, "Tell me, does it take effort to worry?" The young man blinked. "What do you mean? I mean, is worrying easy, or does it require something from you?" He thought about this. "It is exhausting," he said. "It takes everything I have." "Yes," the old woman said, "it does. Worry is very expensive. It costs a great deal of energy to keep it going. Have you ever noticed that?" He nodded slowly. "Now," she said, "let me ask you something else. Does it take effort to be at peace?" The young man opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. He was not sure. He had never really thought about it that way before. Peace had always seemed like something you had to work toward. Something at the end of a long road. The old woman smiled. She had a way of smiling that made you feel like you had just said something much wiser than you realized. "Think of a stone at the bottom of a river," she said. "The water rushes over it all day long. It pushes and pulls and tumbles other things downstream. Leaves, twigs, little clouds of silt. Everything around the stone is in motion, but the stone just sits there. It does not have to try to sit there. It does not have to make an effort to stay still. Stillness is simply what it does when nothing is pushing it around." She paused and let the image settle. "Now, if you were to pick that stone up and throw it," she continued, "it would fly through the air for a moment. It would travel. It would seem very busy and important, but eventually it would land again and it would be still again, because that is what stones do. Movement is temporary. Stillness is where the stone always returns." She took a sip of her tea. "You are like that stone," she said gently. "Underneath all the rushing water of your worries, there is something in you that is already still, already at rest. You do not have to create that stillness. You just have to stop adding to the current." The young man sat with this for a while. The tea warmed his hands. The evening was beginning to soften outside the window. "But how?" he asked very quietly. "How do I stop adding to the current? The worries come on their own." "I do not choose them, that is true," the old woman said. "The worries do come on their own, but you choose to pick them up. You choose to turn them over in your hands. You choose to carry them with you from room to room. The thought arrives by itself, yes, but the thinking, the spinning, the building of one worry on top of another, that is something you are doing. And anything you are doing, you can also stop doing." She said this not as a scolding, not as a demand, but as an offering, the way you might hand someone a blanket on a cold night. Here, this might help. There is something so relieving about this idea. If you let it sink in, that peace is not an achievement. It is not something you earn after years of hard work or spiritual practice. It is your default. It is what you are when you are not busy being something else. Think about it this way. Right now, in this moment, if you were to stop all your worrying, all your planning, all your remembering and rehearsing and figuring out, what would be left? Not emptiness, not a blank void, something much warmer than that. What would be left is you simply here, simply breathing, simply resting. And that state, that quiet, warm, unadorned state is peace. It has been there your whole life. You have just been too busy to notice it most of the time. The way you do not notice the sky, because you are always looking at the clouds. The Buddha once compared the mind to a glass of muddy water. When you first pour it, the water is cloudy and brown. You cannot see through it. If you hold it up to the light, all you see is murk. And if you shake it trying to make it clear, it only gets worse. The mud swirls and the water grows darker. But if you set the glass down and leave it alone, something happens. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, steadily, with the quiet patience of nature itself, the mud begins to sink to the bottom. Grain by grain, particle by particle, the water, all by itself without anyone filtering it or treating it or doing anything at all to it, becomes clear. And here is the part that always moves me. You did not make the water clear. You allowed it to become clear. You did not add anything. You did not fix anything. You simply stopped disturbing it, and clarity, which had been there all along, hidden by the mud, revealed itself. The allowing was the simplest thing in the world. You just set the glass down and waited. That was the whole technique. That was the entire method. Set it down, wait, trust. Let us stay with this idea of energy for a moment, because it is really quite wonderful when you think about it. Everything that disturbs your peace requires fuel. Every worry needs energy to keep it spinning. Every fear needs attention to stay alive. Every plan, every regret, every imagined conversation, every what-if takes something from you. They are all fires, and they all need to be fed. Have you ever been so tired that you could not worry anymore? Perhaps after a long hike or a full day of physical work, or caring for someone who needed you from morning to night. There comes a point where the body is so spent and the mind is so emptied that the worries simply cannot sustain themselves. They flicker and go out like candles at the end of their wicks. And what is left in that beautiful exhaustion is something surprisingly close to peace. Not because the problems went away. The problems are still there exactly where you left them. But you no longer have the energy to spin them into stories, to feed them with attention, to keep the wheel turning. And without that fuel, they simply stop. It is a little like a fire in a fireplace. As long as you keep adding logs, the fire burns. It crackles and snaps and throws off heat and light. But if you stop adding logs, the fire does not burn forever. It cannot. It needs fuel. And when the fuel runs out, the flames grow smaller, quieter, softer, until at last there are only embers, and then eventually warmth, and then stillness. Your worries are the same way. They feel so powerful when they are burning. They feel like they could go on forever, like they have a life of their own. But they do not. They need you. They need your attention, your engagement, your willingness to keep adding one more thought, one more scenario, one more what-if to the pile. Without that, they do exactly what a fire does when you stop feeding it. They go quiet. This is what the old woman was pointing to. Worry is expensive. Fear is expensive. Agitation is expensive. They all cost something. But peace is free. Peace is what is there when you stop spending. Let us explore another story. In a monastery high in the hills, there was a teacher who was very old. This teacher had lived a long and full life, and in those later years had become very quiet. Not the quiet of someone who has nothing to say, but the quiet of someone who has said enough and now prefers to listen. One of the younger students in the monastery was having a difficult time. He was restless. His mind was busy with worries and questions. He could not seem to settle no matter how long he sat in meditation. One afternoon, he went to the old teacher's room and found the teacher sitting by the window watching the clouds. "Teacher," the student said, "I am struggling. My mind will not be still. The harder I try to quiet it, the louder it gets. I feel like I am fighting with myself and I am losing." The old teacher turned from the window and looked at the student with gentle eyes. "Sit with me for a while," the teacher said. The student sat down. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The room was simple: a mat on the floor, a small table with a cup of water, sunlight coming through the window, moving slowly across the wall as the afternoon passed. After some time, the teacher pointed to the cup of water on the table. "Do you see how still the water is?" The student looked. The water was perfectly calm. He could see the surface reflecting the light from the window like a tiny mirror. "Yes," the student said. "Now," the teacher said, "stir it with your finger." The student reached over and swirled his finger through the water. It rippled and splashed and lost its calm completely. "How would you make it still again?" the teacher asked. The student thought, "I could try to hold the water flat with my hand." "Try it." The student pressed his palm gently against the surface of the water. But of course his hand only created more disturbance, more ripples, more movement. The harder he pressed, the more the water sloshed. "It is not working," the student said. "No," the teacher agreed. "It never does. Now take your hand away." The student lifted his hand from the cup, and they both watched as the water slowly, gently, all on its own, returned to stillness. The ripples grew smaller and smaller, circling outward until they reached the edges of the cup and dissolved. Within a few breaths, the water was perfectly calm again. "You see," the teacher said, "you did not need to force the water to be still. You only needed to stop disturbing it. Your mind is the same way. You cannot push it into peace. You can only stop stirring it up, and then peace returns on its own, because that is the nature of water. And it is the nature of your mind as well." The student sat there looking at the cup for a long time. And something in him, some clear throat knot that had been pulling tighter and tighter for weeks, quietly loosened. Not because he understood some great principle, but because for just a moment he stopped trying. And in that moment of not trying, the very thing he had been looking for arrived. It came softly, the way the surface of the water found its stillness. No fanfare, no great revelation, just a quiet settling deep inside his chest that felt like coming home after a long journey. He was still the same person. Nothing in his life had changed, but the water in his cup was still, and somehow so was he. This is one of those teachings that is easy to hear, but takes a lifetime to truly believe, because we are so deeply trained to think that peace must be earned, that calm must be achieved, that happiness must be pursued and captured and held tightly, or it will escape. But what if it is the other way around? What if peace is what happens when we stop pursuing it? What if calm is what arrives when we stop chasing it? What if happiness is not something we need to catch, but something we need to stop running from? There is a beautiful old Zen story about a man who was running from a shadow. He noticed it behind him one day, this dark shape following his every move, and it frightened him. He began to walk faster. The shadow kept pace. He began to run. The shadow ran too. Everywhere he went, the shadow followed him. He turned corners. The shadow turned with him. He zigzagged through open fields. The shadow zigzagged too. He was exhausted. He was terrified. Nothing he did could shake it. And then by chance he ran under a large tree, and in the cool shade of that tree, surrounded by dappled light and the sound of leaves, the shadow disappeared. Not because he had outrun it, but because he had stepped out of the sun. He stood there breathing hard, looking at the ground where the shadow had been, and he began to laugh softly at first, then fully. He had been running from something that only existed because of the conditions he was standing in. Change the conditions, and the thing he feared simply was not there anymore. How many of us are running from shadows? How many of our worries exist only because we keep standing in the conditions that create them? The harsh light of overthinking, the glare of constant self-examination, the bright, relentless sun of trying too hard. This is what we do with so many of our worries. We try to outrun them. We try to think our way out of them, plan our way around them, work our way through them. But they are shadows, and the way to be free of a shadow is not to run faster. It is to step into the shade, to change the conditions, to stop standing in the harsh light of constant effort and endless thinking, and to rest for just a moment in the cool, quiet shade of simply being here, simply breathing, simply letting the glass sit on the table undisturbed. And here is the truly good news. The thing that the old woman and the teacher and the still water in the cup are all pointing toward. You do not have to wait until you are exhausted to find this peace. You do not have to wear yourself out before the worries stop spinning. You can choose in any moment to stop adding fuel, not by fighting the worry, not by pushing it away, not by telling yourself you should not be anxious, but simply by turning your attention somewhere quiet, somewhere that does not require anything from you, somewhere like the feeling of your body resting right now, the gentle weight of gravity holding you, the slow rhythm of your breath. These things do not need your energy. They do not need your effort. They are already happening perfectly without any help from you at all. And when you rest your attention there gently, the way you might rest a tired hand on a warm surface, something happens. The spinning slows. The fires die down. The mud begins to settle, and the water, your water, begins to clear. Not because you made it clear, but because you finally gently set the glass down. You may have already noticed this happening even now. A softening somewhere in your body, a slowing somewhere in your thoughts. You did not make that happen. You allowed it. And that is the whole teaching right there, in that allowing. You do not have to reach for peace. You can let peace reach for you. It has been trying to all day, and now finally, there is enough quiet for it to find you. There is a line from the Buddhist teachings that says, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Tonight perhaps you can let go of the spinning, let go of the worry, not because you have solved anything, but because the worry can wait. It will be there in the morning if you need it. But right now, in this quiet moment, you can set it down the way you would set down a heavy bag at the end of a long walk, not throwing it away, just putting it down, just resting your arms for a while. The stone at the bottom of the river is not struggling. The still water in the cup is not trying. The shadow has dissolved beneath the shade of the tree. And you right now do not need to try either. You can simply rest. And in the resting, something that has always been there, something quiet and warm and steady, will rise to meet you. It always does. Let us rest here for a moment. Feel the weight of your body held and supported. You are safe. There is nothing you need to figure out right now, and when you are ready, we will continue together. Here is something curious that you may have noticed in your own life. The harder you try to be confident, the more aware you become of your doubt. The harder you try to be calm, the more you notice every little ripple of anxiety. The harder you try to fall asleep, the wider awake you feel. The harder you try not to think about something, the more stubbornly it sits in the center of your mind, like a guest who is about to leave until you ask them to. It is as though effort, a certain kind of effort, has a strange talent for attracting the very thing it is trying to push away. Like a hand grasping at water, the tighter the grip, the less you hold. There is a reason for this, and understanding it even just a little can make the whole experience of being human feel a great deal lighter. So let us settle in and explore this together. Let us explore a story. There was once a young craftsman who made pottery. Simple, beautiful pots, the kind you might use to hold flowers or store grain. He had learned from his grandmother, who had learned from hers, and the skill had been passed down through many hands over many years. When he was young, he did not think much about his work. He would sit at the wheel, press his hands into the wet clay, and the pots would take shape almost on their own. His fingers knew what to do, his mind was quiet, absorbed in the feel of the clay, the spin of the wheel, the slow rising of the walls. It was effortless, and the pots he made in those early years were lovely. But as he grew older, something changed. His work began to attract attention. People in the village talked about his pots. A merchant came from a distant town and offered to sell them at the market. Someone called him a true artist. And slowly, so slowly, he did not notice it happening. The way he worked began to change. He started thinking while he was at the wheel. Not about the clay, about himself. Am I doing this right? Is this pot as good as the last one? What if this one fails? What if the merchant comes back and shakes his head? What if the people who admired my work start to see through me? What if I am not really as good as they say I am? What if it was all luck, and the luck is about to run out? Each thought was small, harmless on its own, but they gathered, they accumulated. They layered themselves on top of one another, like dust on a windowsill, so gradually that he could not point to the moment when everything changed. But everything had changed. His hands were still on the clay. They still knew the motions, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. It was busy with fear, with hope, with comparison, with judgment, and the pots he made during this time were different. They were stiffer, more careful, less alive. They had a kind of tension baked into Clear's throat them, a holding back that you could almost feel when you held one in your hands, as if the pot itself was afraid of being wrong. One afternoon his grandmother came to visit. She was very old by then, her own hands no longer steady enough to work the wheel. She sat in the corner of his workshop and watched him for a long time. After a while she said, "You are carrying too much to the wheel." He looked at his hands. They were empty except for the clay. "I am not carrying anything," he said. "Yes, you are," she said gently. "You are carrying what people think of you. You are carrying what you think of yourself. You are carrying yesterday's pot and tomorrow's pot, and every pot you are afraid you will never make. You have so much in your hands that there is no room left for the clay." He stopped the wheel. The hull-formed pot wobbled and collapsed. He looked at the shapeless lump of clay, and for a moment he felt like crying because he knew she was right. "How do I put it down?" he asked. His grandmother thought for a moment. "Do you remember when you were small, when I first let you sit at the wheel?" "Yes." "What were you thinking about?" He smiled just slightly. "Nothing, I was just playing." "Yes," she said. "You were just playing. That is the secret, and it is the only secret there is. Find your way back to the playing." This story carries a teaching that the Buddhist tradition takes very seriously. It is the teaching about what happens when our sense of self gets tangled up with what we do. When the young potter was a child, there was no self at the wheel. There was just the wheel and the clay and a pair of small hands that were delighted by the feeling of something taking shape. That is all. It was pure activity, pure engagement. And it was joyful precisely because there was no one standing behind him, watching, judging, measuring. But when the attention of others arrived, something else arrived with it. A self, an identity, the one who makes the pots, the one who is good at it, the one who must continue to be good at it. And suddenly the simple act of pressing hands into clay was no longer simple, it was a performance. And every performance comes with the fear of failure. In Buddhist teaching, this is sometimes described as the burden of the self, not the self as in your body, your life, your genuine presence here in this world. That self is fine, that self is wonderful, but the constructed self, the one made of opinions and reputations and stories, the one that is always checking to see how it is doing, the one that is always comparing itself to some idea of how it should be, that self is heavy. And when we bring it to our efforts, it acts like a magnet. It attracts everything that is connected to our identity. Every fear about not being enough, every desire to be seen as special, every old wound about being judged or rejected or found wanting. Imagine, if you will, holding a large magnet and walking through a room full of small metal objects. You did not intend to pick any of them up. You just wanted to walk across the room, but the magnet does not care about your intentions. It pulls things toward it, and before you know it, your hands are full, your arms are heavy, and you can barely take a step without something else clinging to you. That is what a certain kind of effort feels like. The effort that comes from the self, the I who is trying, the I who wants to succeed, the I who is afraid of failing. That effort is a magnet, and it picks up everything in the room. Now, here is what is beautiful about this teaching. It does not say that effort is wrong. It does not say that trying is bad. It says something much more helpful than that. It says that the effort is fine. It is what is attached to the effort that causes the trouble. Think about the difference between these two ways of doing the same thing. In one, you are washing dishes. You are thinking about the dishes. You feel the warm water. You notice the way the soap makes the surface slippery. You hear the small clinking sounds. You are just washing dishes, and it is in its own quiet way almost pleasant. In the other, you are washing dishes, but you are thinking about all the other things you should be doing instead. You are thinking about how you always end up doing the dishes and no one else helps. You are thinking about how your whole life seems to be made up of small, unglamorous tasks that no one notices. You are washing dishes, but you are also carrying a heavy story about what washing dishes means, about who you are, about what your life has become. Same dishes, same soap, same water, completely different experience. And the difference is not in the task. It is in what you brought to the task. It is in the magnet. One version has the magnet humming, pulling in stories and judgments and resentments. The other has no magnet at all, just hands, just water, just this moment, clean and uncluttered. A Zen teacher once said, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The tasks do not change. The wood is still wood. The water is still water, but the heaviness is gone. The performance is gone. The person chopping the wood is no longer burdened by the story of who they are or who they should be. They are just chopping. And in that just chopping, there is a freedom that no amount of ephing could ever provide. This is what effortless effort really means. Not doing nothing, not lying down and giving up, but doing what you do without the extra weight, without the magnet, without the iron filings of fear and judgment and comparison clinging to everything you touch. Let us go a little deeper into this, because there is a very gentle and comforting place waiting at the bottom of it. Most of us walk around with a collection of beliefs about who we are. Some of these beliefs are old, formed in childhood, shaped by things that were said to us or done around us, long before we had the ability to question them. Things like, "I am not good enough. I have to work harder than everyone else just to keep up. I am the kind of person who always struggles. I do not deserve rest. If I stop pushing, everything will fall apart. If people really knew me, they would be disappointed." These beliefs often do not announce themselves. They do not walk in the front door and introduce themselves by name. They slip in through the back, quiet as shadows, and they settle into the walls of our minds so thoroughly that we forget they are there. They become the wallpaper. We stop seeing them because we have been looking at them for so long. These are not truths, they are beliefs. They are stories we have been telling ourselves for so long that they feel like facts. But a story, no matter how familiar, is still a story. And stories can be set down, not all at once, not by force, but gently over time, the way a tree lets go of its leaves when autumn comes. One by one, without violence, without rush. The trouble is these beliefs attach themselves to our efforts the way iron filings attach to a magnet. We try to do something, anything, and immediately the old stories show up as if they had been waiting by the door. We try to learn something new, and the voice appears, "You are not smart enough for this." We try to rest, and the voice says, "You do not deserve this. You should be doing something productive." We try to be kind to ourselves, and the voice says, "Who do you think you are?" These voices are not speaking the truth. They are speaking from habit. They are old recordings playing on repeated, and they have been playing for so long that we have started to believe they are the soundtrack of our lives. But they are not. They are just noise, and noise, when you stop feeding, it fades. The Buddha spoke about this when he talked about the fetters that bind us. Not chains made of iron, but chains made of habits of thought. Patterns so familiar we mistake them for who we are. And the path to freedom, he taught, is not to fight those patterns, but to see them clearly, to recognize them as visitors, not as residents. To notice them arriving and to say gently, "Ah, there you are again. I know you, you are the old story. You are welcome to pass through, but you do not have to stay." Let us return to the potter for a moment. After his grandmother left, the young man sat in his workshop for a long time. The collapsed pot sat on the wheel, a shapeless heap. He did not clean it up. He just sat there in the quiet, looking at the clay, and then at his hands, and then at the clay again. Outside he could hear the sounds of the village settling into evening. Dogs barking in the distance, the smell of wood smoke from someone's kitchen. Everything ordinary, everything unhurried. Find your way back to the playing. Her words sat in him, warm and persistent like a seed. The next morning he went to the wheel very early before anyone else was awake. The workshop was cool and still, the air thick with the mineral smell of wet clay. He did not take any orders with him. He did not think about the merchant or the customers or what anyone might say about what he made. He did not even think about making something good. He just sat down. He put his hands on the clay and he let them do what they wanted. At first, nothing much happened. His hands were hesitant. His mind kept trying to jump in with opinions and instructions and warnings. "You are wasting clay. This is not going anywhere. What is the point of this?" But he breathed and he waited. And after a while, something shifted. It was subtle, like a door that had been stuck for a long time, suddenly swinging open on its own. His hands remembered. They remembered the feeling from long ago, from before the merchant and the praise and the fear, the simple pleasure of shaping something with no goal in mind. He was not making a pot. He was not creating art. He was not performing for anyone, including himself. He was just playing, just feeling, just here. His fingers pressed into the clay, and the clay responded, and something began to rise from the wheel that he had not planned, had not designed, had not intended at all. When he finished, the morning light was coming through the window, warm and golden, catching the dust mote suspended in the air. On the wheel sat a pot that was unlike anything he had made in years. It was not perfect. It was not symmetrical. One side was slightly higher than the other, and the rim had a gentle wave to it, like a hillside seen from far away. But it was alive. It had a warmth to it, a looseness, a kind of breath. You could feel just looking music at it, that it had been made with joy, that whoever shaped it had been smiling, or at least had forgotten to frown. He sat back and looked at it, and he laughed. A real laugh, because he had not done anything special. He had simply stopped doing all the extra things that were getting in the way. He had set down the magnet, and without all that metal clinging to his hands remembered what they already knew. This is available to all of us, not just potters and artists. All of us in everything we do. There are moments in your life, probably more than you realize, when the magnet is not operating, when the self steps aside, and you are simply doing what you are doing. It happens when you are listening to a piece of music and you forget where you are. It happens when you are walking in nature and the beauty catches you off guard, and for a moment you are not thinking about yourself at all. It happens in conversation sometimes, when you are so interested in what someone is saying that you forget to monitor how you are coming across. It happens when you laugh, really laugh. The kind of laugh where your whole body participates and there is no room left for self-consciousness. In those moments, the magnet is gone. The fears are not there. The judgments are not there. The old stories are not there. And what is left is not emptiness, not a blank space. What is left is aliveness, pure, unfiltered, joyful aliveness. The kind that does not need a reason or a justification. The kind that simply is the kind you knew as a child before you learned to watch yourself. Before you learned to wonder if you were doing it right. Have you ever watched a child playing? Truly playing. Not performing for anyone. Just lost in their own world. There is a quality to it that is almost luminous. They are completely absorbed, completely present. There is no gap between them and what they are doing. No observer standing behind taking notes, judging the performance. There is just the doing and it glows. We all had this once and it is not lost. It is not something that childhood takes away with it when it goes. It is still there underneath everything, the way a river still flows under ice. Sometimes it surfaces in unexpected moments, in a belly laugh, in a sunset that stops you in your tracks, in the smell of rain on warm pavement. In those moments, you are not performing. You are not monitoring. You are just here. And you remember for just a heartbeat what it feels like to be alive without carrying the weight of your own story. The Zen tradition sometimes calls this your original face, the face you had before you learned to perform, before you learned to worry about what others thought, before you built the constructed self and started dragging it with you everywhere you went. Your original face is still there, underneath all the layers. It has been there the whole time, the way the potter's skill was there the whole time, waiting beneath the worry and the self-doubt. You do not have to earn it back. You do not have to search for it. You just have to stop piling things on top of it. Set down the magnet, let the metal filings fall away, and there underneath is something simple and warm and true. So tonight as you rest, you might notice the magnet at work. A thought might arise. I should be falling asleep by now. Or I wonder if I am doing this right. Or tomorrow is going to be a long day. These thoughts are not problems. They are just the magnet picking things up. Old metal filings clinging out of habit. You do not have to fight them. You do not have to push them away. Just notice them gently. Ah, there is the magnet again. And then softly let your attention return to something that does not need the magnet at all. The warmth of where you are resting, the rhythm of your breath, the quiet, spacious, effortless feeling of simply being here with nothing to prove and nothing to perform and nothing to carry. The potter found his way back to the playing, and so can you. Perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not in any grand or dramatic way, but right now, in this small, quiet moment, you can set the magnet down and feel how light your hands become. Let us rest here for a moment. There is nothing to carry, nothing to hold, and when you are ready, we will continue together. Somewhere near you right now, something is happening, a sound, a sensation, a flicker of thought. It arrived without invitation, without effort, without your permission. It simply appeared the way a leaf appears on the surface of a stream. One moment it was not there, the next it was. You did not ask for it, you did not plan it, and yet here it is. This is what the mind does. All day, all night, without rest, it produces thoughts the way a bell produces sound when it is struck naturally, effortlessly, without anyone deciding that it should. Some of these thoughts are pleasant, some are not. Most are so small and fleeting that we barely register them at all. They drift through like clouds in a wide sky, casting brief shadows and then moving on. And most of these thoughts, if left alone, are as brief and harmless as that leaf on the water. They drift through. They dissolve. They are gone before we even had time to name them. They are the mind's weather, always changing, never permanent. But sometimes we reach into the stream and pick the leaf up. We turn it over, we examine it. We wonder where it came from and where it was going and what it means. And before we know it, we are no longer standing beside the stream, we are in it. The water is around our knees than our waist, and the current is carrying us somewhere we never intended to go. Tonight, let us look at this gently, not to fix it, not to scold ourselves for doing it, but simply to see it clearly, the way you might watch clouds moving across a night sky, with curiosity, with softness, with the quiet amusement of someone who has finally noticed something they've been doing their whole life without realizing it. Let us explore a story. An old teacher was sitting with a small group of students in a quiet room. It was late afternoon, and the windows were open. The sounds of the world outside drifted in gently. Birds whined in the trees, and every now and then the low hum of a cart passing on the road below. One of the students, a young woman who had been sitting very still with her eyes closed, suddenly opened them. She looked frustrated. "I cannot do this," she said. "Every time I try to be still, my mind goes somewhere else. A sound comes in. And suddenly I am thinking about 100 things. I hear a cart on the road, and the next thing I know, I am thinking about the market, and then about dinner, and then about whether I bought enough rice, and then about money, and then about my work. And before I realize what has happened, I have been gone for 10 minutes, and I do not even know where I went." The teacher smiled warmly. "You noticed?" The teacher said. "Of course I noticed. That is the problem." "No," the teacher said gently. "That is the beginning." The student looked confused. The teacher leaned forward. "Let me ask you something. The sound of the cart on the road, did you choose to hear it?" "No, it just happened." "And the first thought, the one about the market? Did you choose that?" She thought about it. "No, it just appeared. One moment I was hearing the cart, and the next the thought was there." "Good. And what about the second thought? The one about dinner?" She paused. "That one. I think I followed the first thought to get there. And the one about rice? I followed that one too. And money and work?" She nodded slowly. "I followed each one to the next like stepping stones." "Yes," the teacher said. "That is exactly right. The first thought was a visitor. It knocked on your door and you did not invite it, it simply arrived. But then you opened the door and you invited it in for tea. And then you invited its friends and its friends. And before you knew it, your house was full of guests you never asked for, and you had lost track of the afternoon. The room was quiet for a moment. A breeze came through the window carrying the scent of jasmine. "The sound of the cart is not the problem," the teacher continued. "The first thought is not the problem. Those are natural. They are what the mind does. A sound arises and the mind responds. That is as natural as an echo in a valley. You cannot stop echoes. You would not want to." "Then what is the problem?" the student asked. "There is no problem," the teacher said, and his voice was very kind. "There is only a habit, the habit of following, the habit of picking up the first thought and connecting it to the next and the next and the next, until you have built a long chain and wandered very far from where you started. That habit is not a flaw in you. It is simply something the mind has learned to do. And anything the mind has learned, it can also unlearn, not by force, but by noticing. This is such a helpful distinction, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. There is a difference between a thought appearing and thinking. The first is something that happens to us. The second is something we do, and the space between them, that small quiet gap between the thought arriving and our decision to follow it, is one of the most interesting places in all of human experience. It is tiny, it lasts barely a heartbeat, but it is there. And once you learn to see it, everything changes. Think of it this way: you are lying in a quiet room. A dog barks somewhere in the distance. That is a sound. It arrived on its own. You did not summon it. And along with the sound, a thought might appear, just a small one. A dog that is natural, that is the mind doing what minds do. Recognizing, naming, making sense of the world. Nothing more. But then, if you are not paying attention, something else can happen. Clears throat, something so quick and so familiar that it feels automatic. The mind takes that small innocent thought and begins to build on it like a spider spinning a web, one thread connected to the next, each one leading further from the center. A dog. I wonder whose dog that is. It sounds like it might be a large dog. I have always wanted a dog, but my apartment is too small. I really should find a bigger place, but rent is so expensive these days and my job does not pay enough. And I never seem to get ahead. And you know, this has been a pattern my whole life. I always end up in the same place. What is wrong with me? And there you are, a single bark, one sound in the night, and now you are reviewing your entire life. Lying awake, heart beating a little faster, jaw a little tighter, a little further from sleep than you were a moment ago, all from a bark, all from a single leaf that you picked up from the stream and would not put down. The bark was not the problem. The first thought was not the problem. The chain was the problem. The linking, clears throat the building, the way one small thought becomes a staircase that leads us down step by step into rooms we did not mean to enter. Rooms that are darker and colder than the quiet place we started from. There is a playful way to think about this that one teacher described. He said that the mind produces thoughts the way a field produces grass. You cannot stop a field from growing grass. That is what fields do. And you cannot stop the mind from producing thoughts. That is what minds do. But you can choose whether or not to mow a path through the grass and follow it into the woods. Most of the time we do not even realize we are mowing. We do not realize we have started following. The chain builds so quickly, so seamlessly, that by the time we notice we are already deep in the forest of our own thinking, surrounded by worries and plans and memories with no idea how we got there. And here is the wonderful part. The moment you notice, you are free. Not free forever, not free from ever doing it again, but free in that moment. Because noticing breaks the chain. It is like waking up inside a dream. The dream does not have to end, but you are no longer lost in it. You can see it for what it is, and in that seeing, something relaxes. The Buddhist tradition calls this awareness. Not a special, mystical, hard-to-achieve kind of awareness. Just ordinary, everyday noticing. Oh, I have been following my thoughts again. I started with the sound of a dog and ended up worrying about my career. How did that happen? And then very gently, without any judgment at all, you come back. You return to where you are, to the room, to the quiet, to the feeling of your body resting. That is the whole thing, the noticing and the returning over and over and over again. Not because you are failing, but because that is how it works. The mind wanders, you notice, you come back. The mind wanders again, you notice again, you come back again. Each return is not a failure. Each return is the practice itself. Each return is a small act of kindness toward yourself. Let us explore another story, a very simple one. A student once asked a teacher, "How do I stop my thoughts?" The teacher said, "Can you stop the wind?" "No." "Can you stop the river from flowing?" "No." "Then why would you try to stop your thoughts? They are as natural as the wind and the water. Let them come, let them go. Your only task is to not chase after them." The student thought about this, but sometimes the thoughts are so loud, so convincing, they feel so real and so important. The teacher picked up a small bell from the table beside them and rang it once. The sound filled the room, clear and bright. They both listened as it faded, growing softer and softer until it disappeared entirely. "Did you hear that?" the teacher asked. "Yes." "Where did it go?" Silence. "Nowhere, it just faded. That is what thoughts do," the teacher said. "When you do not add to them, they ring. They are vivid for a moment, and then they fade. You did not have to push the sound away. You did not have to fight it. You simply let it be, and it dissolved on its own. Every thought is like that bell. It will fade if you let it." "But what if I ring it again?" the student asked. "What if I keep hitting the bell?" The teacher looked at him with warm, amused eyes. "Then it will keep ringing, and you will wonder why there is so much noise." How many of us keep hitting the bell? How many of us have a worry, and we look at it and we turn it over, and we examine it from every angle, and we share it with others, and we research it, and we plan for it, and we rehearse what we will do about it. And each of those actions, each of those mental movements is another strike of the bell, keeping the sound alive, keeping it ringing and ringing and ringing long after it would have naturally faded into silence. We do this with worries, we do this with regrets, we do this with things people said to us years ago that still sting when we replay them. We hit the bell of an old conversation again and again, and each time we hear the same sound, and each time it hurts the same way, and each time we are surprised that it still hurts, not realizing that the pain is fresh each time because we are the ones keeping it ringing. And we do it with pleasant things too. We replay a compliment someone gave us, trying to hold on to the warm feeling, hitting the bell again and again, and wondering why the sound gets thinner each time, not realizing that joy, like everything else, is most vivid when it arrives naturally and most hollow when we try to force it to repeat. This is not something to feel bad about. Please hear that. This is not a flaw in you. It is not a weakness. It is simply what minds do when they have not been shown another way. We were never taught, most of us, that we could simply let a thought ring once and then fade. We were taught the opposite. Actually, we were taught to engage with our thoughts, to take them seriously, to follow them wherever they lead, to analyze and plan and figure things out, and never leave anything unexamined. And so we do faithfully, exhaustingly, from morning until night, and sometimes through the night as well. But there is another way, and it is not a complicated way. It does not require any special skill or years of training or a particular kind of mind. It is simply this. When a thought arises, you can let it be. You can hear the bell, notice its sound, appreciate its brief music, and then let it fade. You can watch the leaf land on the stream and choose this time not to pick it up. Not because the leaf is dangerous, not because the thought is bad, but because you are tired of following and you would like just for now to stay where you are, to rest, to be still, to let the stream carry its leaves without you. There is something else worth noticing here, something that might surprise you. When you stop following your thoughts, when you stop chasing the chain from link to link, what you find is not blankness. It is not an empty, cold, silent void. This is what many people fear, that if they stop thinking there will be nothing left, that without the constant hum of their inner monologue, they will somehow disappear. But the opposite is true. What you find when the thinking settles is actually quite rich, quite full, quite alive. You find this moment, this actual living, breathing moment, with all its texture and warmth. You find the feeling of your body, which has been patiently waiting for your attention all this time. The weight of your limbs, the softness of whatever you are resting on. You find the temperature of the air on your skin, a sensation so gentle and so constant that you had completely stopped noticing it. You find the sounds that are here, not the ones in your memory or your imagination, but the real ones happening right now in this room, in this night. You find a kind of fullness that has nothing to do with activity. It is the fullness of a clear night sky, not empty, full of space, full of stars, full of depth. Quiet, yes, but not barren, not lonely, spacious. An old Zen saying puts it this way: when you stop chasing, you discover that you are already home. This is what was there all along underneath the noise. This ordinary, beautiful breathing moment. You did not have to go anywhere to find it. You just had to stop leaving. That is the gift hidden inside this teaching. We think that our thinking keeps us safe, that our worrying keeps us prepared, that our planning keeps us in control. And to some degree, at certain times, in certain practical ways, thinking is a wonderful tool. We need it. We are grateful for it. It helps us solve real problems and navigate real challenges. But when the tool runs all day and all night without stopping, when we never set it down, when we carry it even to bed, even to rest, even into the quiet moments that are meant for simply being, then the tool becomes a burden. clears throat, and the sound of the bell never stops ringing. Not because the bell is broken, but because we keep striking it out of habit, out of a feeling that if we stop, something bad will happen. But nothing bad happens when the bell stops ringing. Nothing bad happens when the chain breaks. Nothing falls apart. Nothing is lost. What happens is something much simpler and much kinder than that. The noise fades, and in the fading you hear something you had forgotten was there, the quiet. Your quiet, the one that has been waiting for you patiently all this time. So tonight, as you lie here, you might notice the chain beginning to form. A thought will arrive quiet as a moth at a window, and then another connected to the first by the thinnest of threads, and then a third and a fourth. And at some point, gently, you will notice what is happening. You will catch yourself somewhere on the staircase, halfway down, heading toward a room you did not mean to visit. And in that noticing you can smile. Not at yourself in frustration, not with impatience, but in recognition, in warmth. Ah, sighs, there goes the chain again. How familiar, how perfectly human, and then you can let it go, not push it away, not slam a door on it. Just stop following, stop mowing the path, stop hitting the bell. Let the leaf float past without picking it up, and feel yourself arrive back here in this quiet room, in this gentle moment where nothing at all needs to happen. The cart will pass on the road. The dog will bark in the distance. The thought will rise and shimmer and dissolve like a bubble in still water, and you will be here, just here, where you have always been, where you have never actually left. No matter how far your thoughts tried to carry you, as the Buddha is said to have taught, you are the sky. Everything else is just the weather. The thoughts are weather. Let them pass. The sky does not chase its own clouds. Let us rest here for a moment. Let the thoughts settle like snow in a glass globe, drifting down softly, finding their way to the bottom in their own time. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been on a quiet journey together tonight. We have walked through orchards waiting for spring. We have sat beside cocoons and cups of still water. We have listened to birds and watched leaves floating on streams. And through all of it, there has been a thread, gentle and steady, winding through each story and each teaching like a path through a garden at dusk. That thread is this: you do not have to try so hard. It has been said in different ways, through different stories, in different voices, but the heart of it has always been the same. The peace you are looking for is not far away. The answers you are chasing are not hiding. The thing you think you need to become, you may already be. Now, as we come to rest together one last time, let us follow that thread to where it has been leading us all along, to the quietest room in the house, the innermost place. The one truth that sits beneath all the others, patient as a mountain, waiting for us to stop searching long enough to notice that it is already here, that it has always been here, that it never left. Let us begin with a question. A strange one perhaps, but stay with it. Have you ever looked everywhere for something? Turned the whole house upside down, checked every drawer and every pocket, grown more and more frustrated, only to discover that the thing you were looking for was in your hand the whole time, or in your pocket, or sitting on the table right in front of you, so close and so obvious that your eyes kept sliding right past it? There is always a moment in that discovery that is equal parts relief and laughter. You shake your head, you smile at yourself, not in anger, in wonder. How could I have missed something so close? How could I have searched so hard for something that was never lost? This is in many ways the deepest teaching in the Buddhist tradition, not a teaching about gaining something, not a teaching about becoming something, but a teaching about recognizing what has always already been here. Let us explore a story. In a village at the edge of a great forest, there lived an old man who kept an elephant. The elephant was large and gentle, with wise, patient eyes and a slow, steady way of moving through the world. It was the man's companion and his helper, and it lived in a large, open shelter behind his house, surrounded by trees. One morning, the old man woke up in a state of great confusion. He sat on the edge of his bed and looked around his house and felt that something was missing, something important, something he could not name. It was not a thing exactly. It was more like a feeling, a sense that something essential had gone, had slipped away in the night, and without it, the day ahead felt hollow and uncertain. He went outside and began to search. He walked through the village, asking his neighbors if they had seen what he had lost. But when they asked him what it was, he could not say. "I will know it when I find it," he told them. And they shook their heads kindly and wished him well. He walked to the river and looked along the banks as if the thing he had lost might have washed up among the stones. He walked to the edge of the great forest and peered into the green shadows between the trees, wondering if perhaps it had wandered in there. He climbed a small hill and looked out over the countryside, shading his eyes against the sun, scanning the horizon for something, anything that might explain the feeling of absence in his chest. He searched all morning, he searched all afternoon. The sun moved across the sky. His legs grew tired, his heart grew heavy, and the thing he was looking for remained unfound. Late in the day, he sat down on a flat rock near his house, exhausted and discouraged. He put his head in his hands. The evening light was golden and warm, and the air smelled like wood smoke and ripening fruit. And as he sat there, catching his breath, feeling the ache in his feet and the ache in his heart, he heard a sound behind him, a low, gentle rumbling, familiar, warm. He turned around, and there, standing in its shelter exactly where it always stood, was his elephant. Large and quiet and perfectly at ease, it blinked its deep dark eyes at him slowly. It swayed gently the way elephants do, as if rocking itself to sleep. It had been there all day. It had been there all along. It had not moved. The old man looked at the elephant. The elephant looked back, and the old man, sitting on his rock in the golden light, began to laugh, softly at first. Then fully, the kind of laugh that comes not from humor, but from recognition, from the strange, sweet relief of finding something that was never actually lost. He had spent the entire day searching the jungle for something that was already quietly at home. There is a teaching from an old Tibetan tradition that speaks to this directly. It says, "Do not go into the inextricable jungle looking for the elephant who is already quietly at home." What a thing to hear, especially tonight. Especially now when you have done so much searching in your own life. Snorts, searching for peace, searching for answers, searching for the right way to live, the right thing to believe, the right version of yourself to become. How much of your life has been spent in that jungle? How many paths have you tried? How many books have you read? How many conversations have you had? How many quiet nights have you spent turning things over in your mind, hoping that the next thought would be the one that finally settled everything? And please know, this is not a scolding. The searching is not wrong. The searching is deeply, beautifully human. It is what we do. It is how we grow. Every path you have walked, even the ones that seem to lead nowhere, has brought you here to this moment, to this quiet night, to these words. None of it was wasted. But there comes a point, a quiet, music-gentle turning point where the searching can stop. Not because you have found the answer somewhere out there in a book or a teaching or a distant place, but because you have turned around gently and seen what was behind you the whole time, what was beneath you the whole time, what was inside you the whole time. The elephant. Quiet, patient, yours. Let us go deeper into this, because there is something here that is worth spending time with. What if happiness is not something you can find? What if it is not located anywhere? What if it is not at the end of any road, inside any achievement, behind any door you have not yet opened? What if happiness is more like the sky than like a destination? Always there, always overhead, sometimes hidden by clouds, yes, sometimes obscured by storms, but never gone, never absent, never destroyed, just temporarily out of view. Think about the sky for a moment. You have never been separate from the sky. Even when you are inside, even when the ceiling is above you, the sky is still there just beyond. You have lived your entire life beneath it. It has witnessed every day you have ever had, every joy and every difficulty. And it has never, not once, abandoned you. The clouds come and go, the storms come and go, but the sky remains. The old Buddhist teachers use this image often. They said, "Your true nature is like the sky, and your thoughts and emotions are like the weather. The weather changes constantly. Rain, sun, wind, stillness, but the sky does not change. It does not become less because of the storm. It does not become more because of the sunshine. It is always simply itself, vast, open, unchanging, and you are like that. Underneath all the changing weather of your thoughts and feelings and worries and hopes, there is something in you that does not change. Something vast, something open, clear's throat, something that has been quietly holding all of your experience, the way the sky holds the clouds, without ever being disturbed by any of it. There is a beautiful image from the old teachings that compares happiness to a rainbow. You see it in the distance, shimmering and vivid and impossibly beautiful. And you want it. You want to reach it, to stand inside it, to feel its colors on your skin. So you start walking toward it, and the rainbow stays ahead of you. You walk faster, it moves further. You run, it keeps its distance. You can chase it your whole life and never touch it, because a rainbow is not a place. It is a meeting of light and water and angle. It exists only from where you stand. But here is the part the old teachers want us to notice. Even though you cannot catch the rainbow, it has always been there. It has accompanied you every moment. It was never running from you. It was never hiding. It was shining right there in the air between you and the horizon, made from the same sunlight that warms your face. You were never separate from it. You were just looking in the wrong direction. Or rather, you were looking in the right direction, but thinking you needed to be somewhere else to see it. Happiness is like this. Peace is like this. The thing you have been searching for your whole life is like this. Not far away, not hidden, not earned by the right combination of effort and luck and timing, but here, right here, shining quietly in the light of your own awareness, waiting for you to stop chasing long enough to notice. Let us explore one more story together, a gentle one to carry with us into sleep. A long time ago, in a small monastery, there was a student who had been practicing for many years. She was devoted, she was sincere. She had given up a comfortable life to sit in silence, day after day, year after year, searching for what the old teachings called awakening. One evening she went to the teacher and said, "I have been here for many years. I have sat through thousands of hours of silence. I have examined my thoughts. I have watched my breath. I have done everything you asked me to do, and still I have not found what I am looking for," the teacher said. "What are you looking for?" "Peace," she said, "real peace. The kind that does not depend on anything, the kind that does not come and go." The teacher was quiet for a long moment. Then the teacher said, "Close your eyes." She closed her eyes. Now, without doing anything at all, without making any effort, without searching for anything or trying to create anything, "Tell me what is here." She sat for a while. At first, her mind jumped in with its usual activity. Thoughts about dinner, a sound from outside, the wind shifting in the trees, a slight ache in her knee from all the sitting, a brief wondering about whether she was doing this correctly. But the teacher had said without doing anything. So she let those things be. She did not follow them. She did not push them away. She just let them float like leaves on water, like clouds in a wide sky. And after a while something happened, or rather, nothing happened. And in that nothing, in that gap where effort would normally be, she noticed something she had never noticed before. Or perhaps she had noticed it 1,000 times, but had never stopped long enough to recognize it. Underneath everything, underneath the thoughts and the sounds and the sensations and the slight discomfort of sitting still, underneath the story of who she was and what she was doing here and how long she had been searching, and whether or not she was making progress. Underneath all of it, there was something. Not a thing exactly. Not a feeling or a thought or an experience in the usual sense. More like a space, a warmth, a quiet, steady presence that had no name and no shape and no edge. It was not exciting, it was not dramatic. It did not flash or glow or make any announcement of itself. Snorts, it was the simplest thing she had ever encountered. It was just here, the way the sky is here, the way the ground is here, the way your own breathing is here. Always happening, always faithful, always present, whether you notice it or not. It was so ordinary that she had overlooked it for years, the way you might overlook the air you breathe. Because it is always there, and never asks to be noticed. The way you might overlook the ground beneath your feet, because it has never once failed to hold you up. She opened her eyes. They were wet. "I have been looking for this," she whispered. "Yes, the teacher said it was here the whole time. Yes. Why could I not find it?" The teacher smiled softly. "Because you were looking. The searching itself was what hid it from you. You were so busy trying to find peace that you could not see the peace you were sitting in. It is like looking for your glasses while they are on your face. The looking is what creates the feeling of loss. But nothing was ever lost." She sat there for a long time, not moving, not speaking, just resting in that ordinary, extraordinary stillness. She had finally stopped long enough to feel. Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling. Not because she had gained something new, but because she had finally stopped losing something she never actually lost. The evening deepened around them. Somewhere outside, a night bird called once softly and then was quiet. This is where all the teachings of this evening come together, like streams joining a river, like paths through a forest, that all lead eventually to the same clearing. The spring breeze that brings the blossoms without our effort, the butterfly that builds its wings in the dark without our help, the birds singing outside the window while we search for something wonderful somewhere else, the still water that clears itself when we stop stirring, the magnet we can set down when we notice how heavy our hands have become, the bell that fades into silence when we stop striking it. All of them, every single one, has been pointing here to this place, to this moment, to the extraordinary discovery that what we were looking for never went anywhere. It was never missing, it was never lost. It has been here quietly, patiently, like an elephant standing in its own home, like a sky above its own clouds, waiting for us to come back from the jungle and sit down and breathe, and finally look up. There is nothing to do, nothing to force, nothing to want, and everything happens by itself. Those words come from the old teachings, and they are perhaps the most comforting words in the world if you let them be. Nothing to do, not because you are lazy, not because you have given up, but because everything that matters is already happening. Your heart is already beating, your lungs are already breathing. The peace beneath your thoughts is already peaceful. The sky above your clouds is already clear. You do not need to add anything. You do not need to fix anything. You do not need to build the sky. You just need to remember that you are it. And so what remains after all the stories and all the teachings and all the gentle explorations we have shared tonight? Something very simple, almost embarrassingly simple. The kind of simple that you might walk right past if you were not paying attention. You are already home. You have always been home. The peace you are looking for is not at the end of a long journey. It is not inside a temple on a distant mountain. It is not something that the right teacher or the right book or the right number of years will finally unlock. It is here in this breath, in this body, in this quiet, ordinary, luminous moment that is happening right now, whether you notice it or not. The old Tibetan teachers said it this way: happiness cannot be found through great effort and willpower. It is already here in relaxation and letting go. Do not strain yourself. There is nothing to do. What a gift those words are. Not a demand, not an instruction. Not a test you can fail, a gift wrapped in simplicity and offered with open hands, the way a grandparent offers a blanket on a cold night. Here, take this. It was always yours. Happiness is already here. You do not have to earn it. You do not have to deserve it. You do not have to be a certain kind of person or reach a certain level of understanding. You just have to relax. You just have to let go. You just have to stop searching the jungle for the elephant, who is already and has always been quietly at home. So let yourself rest now. Let the searching end just for tonight. Let the questions dissolve into the quiet, the way sugar dissolves in warm water, not by force, but by simply being held in something warm and still. Let your breath carry you, the way a river carries a leaf gently, effortlessly toward the sea. You are not missing anything. You are not behind. You are not broken, and you do not need fixing. You are exactly where you need to be, and where you are is home. Where you have always been is home. The elephant is here. The sky is clear. The rainbow is shining right where you are standing in the quiet light of this ordinary, extraordinary night. As the old teachers whispered across the centuries with such tenderness, it can still be felt, all is yours already. Do not search. Let us rest here. You have arrived. There is nowhere else to go. There is nothing left to find, and when you are ready, we will close this evening together. The night is quiet now. The stories have been told, the teachings have been offered, and you are still here resting, breathing, held by whatever you are resting on, held by the gentle pull of gravity, held by the night itself. There is nothing left to learn tonight, nothing left to remember or understand. If something from this evening stays with you, let it stay on its own. And if everything drifts away like a dream you cannot quite recall in the morning, that is fine too. The seeds have been planted. They will do their work in the dark, in the soil, in their own quiet time. You do not need to check on them. Let us sit together one last time in the simplest truth of all. You arrive tonight carrying things we all do. We carry the day behind us like a long shadow, the conversations we had, the things we did and did not do, the small worries that cling like burrs to the fabric of our thinking, the larger ones that sit deeper in the chest, in the belly, in the places where the body stores what the mind cannot quite process. And over the course of this evening, perhaps some of those things have loosened, not because you solved them, not because you figured anything out, but because for a little while you stopped carrying them. You set them down, the way the old woman in our story suggested, the way the teacher, by the cup of water, demonstrated, the way the farmer in the orchard finally learned. You let them rest, and in the resting, something softened. That softening is not nothing. It is in fact everything. It is the body remembering what the mind so often forgets, that you were not built to carry the world on your shoulders every hour of every day. You are built to carry it for a while, and then to set it down, to work and then to rest, to think and then to stop thinking, to hold on, and then when the time is right, to let go. The Buddha, in one of his simplest and most human teachings, once reminded his students that all things that arise also pass away. This is true of storms. It is true of seasons. It is true of difficult feelings, and it is true of beautiful ones. Everything moves, everything changes, everything eventually settles, and you tonight are settling. You can feel it. Perhaps a heaviness in your limbs that is not tiredness exactly, but something gentler than tiredness. Release. A letting down like a bird folding its wings after a long flight, and finally coming to rest on a branch that has been waiting for it all day. There is a softness behind your eyes, the kind that comes when you stop looking for things, when you stop scanning and searching and evaluating and just let your gaze, even your inner gaze, go soft like candles being dimmed one by one in a room that no longer needs to be bright. There is a warmth in your chest that has no name and needs no name. It is not happiness exactly, and it is not sadness. It is something underneath both of those, something more fundamental. It is just your body coming home to itself after a long day of being elsewhere. After a long day of doing and thinking and carrying and trying, your body knows how to come home. It has been doing it every night of your life, and tonight you are letting it. We spoke tonight about cherry trees and spring breezes, about the patience of seeds in dark soil, about butterflies building their wings inside cocoons, doing their most important work in a place no one can see. We spoke about birds, singing outside open windows, and how easy it is to miss their song when we are busy chasing something we think is more important. We spoke about still water and how it clears itself when you stop stirring, about the shadows that disappear when you step into the shade, about magnets and the heavy things they attract, and the lightness that comes when you set them down, about the bells that ring in our minds and how they fade all on their own when we stop striking them, and about an elephant, patient and gentle, standing quietly at home while we searched the whole jungle for something that was never lost. These are not just stories. They are mirrors held up gently at just the right angle, so you can catch a glimpse of something you already know but may have forgotten. Something about your own nature. Something about the peace that lives inside you. Not as a reward for good behavior or hard work or spiritual achievement, but as your birthright, as the ground you stand on, as the sky above your head, as the breath in your lungs, which has never once asked you to earn it. Every tradition that has ever looked deeply at the human heart has found the same thing there. Beneath the worry, beneath the fear, beneath the endless churning of thought and plan and memory, there is stillness. There is warmth. There is a quiet knowing that does not need words and does not need proof. It is simply there the way light is there when you open the curtains. Not created by the opening, just revealed. You do not have to remember the details of tonight. You do not have to recall which story said what or which teaching came from where. The details are like rain, they fall and they soak into the earth. And the earth does not need to remember each individual drop in order to grow. It just grows greener, and something in you tonight is growing greener too. Quietly, without your help, without your effort, in the dark, in the stillness, in the gentle letting go. And now, as you lie here, let us do the simplest thing in the world. Let us do nothing, not the nothing of waiting for something to happen, not the nothing of boredom or emptiness, but the rich, warm, full nothing of a person who has finally truly completely stopped. The nothing of the stone at the bottom of the river, the nothing of the clear water in the cup, the nothing of the sky on a cloudless night, vast and still and full of stars. Feel your body, not with effort, not with attention that grips or examines. Just feel it the way you feel the warmth of sunlight on your skin. Effortlessly, naturally, your body is here. It has been here all evening, faithfully breathing, faithfully beating, faithfully holding you in the world. It asks so little of you. Tonight you can give it the one thing it wants most. You can leave it alone. You can let it rest. Feel your breath, not controlling it, not deepening it or slowing it or shaping it in any way, just noticing that it is happening in and out, in and out. Like the tide, like the rhythm of the earth itself turning slowly in the dark, your breath does not need your help. It has been breathing you since the moment you were born. It will carry you through this night, the way it has carried you through every night of your life, faithfully, gently, without asking for anything in return. Notice how each exhale is a little letting go, a little release. The body contracts gently, softly, and then opens again, contracts and opens like a flower that closes at dusk and opens at dawn, like the tide that goes out and then returns. There is a rhythm here that is older than you, older than any of us, and it is holding you right now. You are part of it. You have always been part of it, and you do not have to do anything to belong to it. You already do, and feel the quiet, the beautiful, spacious quiet that is here. When the thinking slows down, it is not an absence, it is a presence. It is the most gentle, the most patient presence you will ever know. It is the presence of this moment fully itself, fully alive, needing nothing added and nothing taken away. This is what the old teachers were pointing to all along with all their stories and all their gentle words. Just this, the ordinary miracle of being here, breathing, resting at peace. Not performing peace, not achieving peace, just being it. The way the sky is the sky, the way the water is the water, without trying, without effort, without a single thing left to do. There is a line from an ancient text that says, "In the end, there is nothing to attain." And far from being sad or disappointing, this is the most freeing thing you will ever hear. Because if there is nothing to attain, then there is nothing you are lacking. If there is nothing to reach for, then you are already where you need to be. If there is nothing to do, then you can finally fully completely rest. Not tomorrow. Not after you have sorted out your life. Not after you have become a better person or found the right answers or earned enough peace to deserve a good night's sleep. Now, right now, this very breath, this very moment you are allowed, you are welcome, you are enough. The spring breeze is not coming. It is already here. It has been here the whole time, moving through you, gentle and warm and patient, waiting for you to notice. And now you have noticed, and now you can rest. So let your eyes close if they have not already. Let your hands be still. Let your jaw soften. Let the muscles in your face relax, the ones around your eyes, the ones in your forehead, the ones you did not even realize you were holding. Let your shoulders drop. Let your belly be soft. Let the whole weight of your body sink into whatever is holding you, and trust that it will hold. The stories are over. The teachings are done. The night is deep and kind, and it is yours. You are the sky. The clouds have passed. You are the water. The mud had settled. You are the tree. The blossoms are on their way, and you are the elephant. Quiet and whole, standing gently in your own home, exactly where you have always been. There is nothing to do, nothing to force, nothing to want, and everything is exactly as it should be. Sleep now. If sleep is ready for you, and if it is not quite ready, that is fine too. Just rest. Just breathe. Just be here in this warm and simple place where nothing is asked of you and nothing is owed. The night will hold you. The quiet will keep you. And in the morning the world will be there, patient and familiar, waiting for you with all its ordinary beauty. But that is tomorrow, and tomorrow can wait. Right now there is only this, only here, only the gentle rising and falling of your breath, carrying you softly, effortlessly like a leaf on a still river toward the deep and tender shore of sleep. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here.